federal plea deal for President Biden's son Hunter fell apart in a courtroom today after federal prosecutors say he is still under investigation and could face more charges. As Cole Higgins reports, that led to Hunter Biden entering a new not guilty plea.
Drama in Delaware. Hunter Biden's expected plea deal with the Justice Department unraveling in a federal court in Wilmington. U.S. District Judge Mary Ellen Noriega not accepting a plea deal between Department of Justice prosecutors and Hunter Biden's legal team.
Very telling that the judge intervened here and said basically, no, I'm not going to approve some sweeping blanket deal.
Judge Noriega saying she's concerned by the two parties seemingly linking a tax plea agreement to resolving a felony gun charge, calling the deal in which Biden would enter a diversion program to resolve the charge unusual, and eventually asking both sides to file additional briefs explaining the plea deal's legal structuring.
I mean, that tells you that the court has serious concerns about other potential charges here and also the scope of the deal, which has seemed outrageous from the beginning.
Prosecutors say Hunter Biden failed to pay between $1.1 million and $1.5 million in taxes before legal deadlines. Biden entering a not guilty plea for now. Meanwhile, House Republicans moving ahead with their own broader probe of the Bidens based on unverified allegations that the president is tied to his son's foreign business deals.
There are serious questions about potential corruption, and that ought to be a concern for every American, and it is for me.
So far, there are no proven links between Hunter's business deals and his father, who has denied any involvement. I'm Cole Higgins reporting.